Hello again. So teenagers, a lot of people looking at this video will have at some point experienced living with a teenage dog. It's one of the most challenging age periods that dogs go through. As a teenager, your dog is going through so much. So once they've been through their puppy stage, they've been concentrating on learning about the world they're in, seeing new things, taking on new information, and they've been very open-minded to new experiences and new things that are happening around them. That's the time, that's their socialization period. That's the time that you'll be focusing on taking them to new places and showing them lots of new experiences. At this time, your puppy is very happy and bouncy, and they're confident and they're excited to see the world. Then one day they become a teenager and all of that changes. So most dogs become teenagers between 6 and 10 months of age. It can vary according to the size of the dog and the breed, but if you keep that sort of age period in mind, you'll start to notice some changes in your dog as they become an adolescent. And during this period, their hormones are starting to take over. They're starting to find out who they are. They're starting to look at the world in a different way. This is no longer an exciting playground for them to just have a great time and make friends. And now they're starting to decide, what is their role in this world? What do they do at home? What's their place in your family? Their place with other family members. Maybe you've got other pets, other dogs. So they're really just trying to discover themselves now. They're trying to find out what their personality is. Are they a watchdog or a guard dog, or are they a nanny dog? Are they very caring? Are they a protector? Are they more of a hunter-gatherer? That sort of personality trait is now going to start to really develop, and they're going to start testing their world in lots of different ways to the ways that they've done it before. Previously, they've just really been interested in, can I play with it? Can I eat it? But now they really want to know, what is that world about now? How does that affect them and their future and their life around them? So everything is changing now for your teenage dog. Hormones are in there, they're playing a big part in this. And your role really at this stage is to try and just keep going. You want to hold on tight, keep doing the training that you've been doing before, keep that consistency going, keep that expectations the same. So the only thing that's changed in your relationship with your dog is your dog's behavior. You're going to remain completely the same as you go on. Things that might start to break down would be things like the recall, some general obedience, because your dog's really just trying to find out, do they still have to do all these things that you've taught them? And what would be the consequences if they don't do these things? So this is a period of time where you might be trying to think about, should you be using a long lead for a while instead of letting your dog off their lead? Maybe you need to be a little bit sort of more consistent with the rules of the house. If you expect your dog to sit before you put the food down in front of them, make sure that they are actually doing that. If you want them to sit before you cross the road, go back to that kind of training and just revisit all of this so that you're being that one consistent guiding light throughout the whole period of time. And this period, as I say, it starts between 6 and 10 months, and it'll go on until your dog's between sort of 18 months and 2 years old. And something else that happens to them during this period is they become quite vulnerable to new experiences. So if your dog hasn't been introduced to lots of new things as a puppy, anything new they come across now, they're going to be a lot more suspicious about, and they're going to be vulnerable to fear responses and things like that. Teenagers physically needs change as well. So they need a bit more sleep than they used to. They might need less food sometimes they might need more food. Their growth is kind of a bit varied. So their needs are going to be changing quite regularly. And what this means is that they are much closer to overwhelm a lot of the time. So all of these new experiences, everything that they've seen and smelt and heard, it's all going to be put into their brain. And once that brain gets full up, then that's when the dog experiences overwhelm, and at that point then they're going to be quite reactive to stuff in their environment. So they might previously have been great with other dogs, running and playing and making new friends in the park, but today they've had lots of experiences on the way. They're feeling kind of hungry today, even though they didn't yesterday. They haven't had as many naps. They're sort of tired, and all of those other things are just all in there. And normally they would have coped really well with this, but now because they're a teenager, their coping ability with all of these things has been massively reduced, and it doesn't take very much then for a dog to run into their space, and then they're going to react to that, and a new habit may have started. This is how a lot of reactive behaviour suddenly starts during a teenage time. Lots of times when I speak to my clients and we try to trace back to where a behaviour may have come from, we end up tracing it back to whenever they were a teenager, just because they are so vulnerable to this stuff. As an adult, they'll come out of this teenage phase, and their ability to cope will get much better. Their stress bucket, if you like, or that reactivity, vulnerability will become much less important when they get older. So they'll cope better with things, but during this kind of period of time, they're not coping with things very well at all. And if your dog's not getting enough naps, that will make them grumpy. If their diet and feeding routine has been thrown off because maybe yesterday they weren't hungry, today they're twice as hungry. Perhaps they've had lots of different things that's happened today. You've tried some training. Maybe they've not enjoyed their training, and that's been frustrating for both of you. And that experience is now still working on them. So there's so many different things. Plus, of course, they're growing at funny rates. So all of this is going to be playing on them. So this will keep on going now until they get to sort of 18 months to 2 years. Once they've come out of this period, then they start to settle down into becoming an adult. And if you've been able to continue your training consistently throughout that teenage period, even though it might have felt like you were getting nowhere one day and you were doing brilliant the next, and it was so inconsistent, and it really probably felt like you were on a roller coaster. Their mood was up and down and all over the place. By the time you get to the end of that teenage period and they start to settle down to an adult, if you've been able to work through that period with them, all of a sudden you'll start to see all of that training will have paid off, and it'll all start to click back into place, and you'll have that consistent, steady, easygoing dog again that you had before they become a teenager. So it's really important when you're going through this to remember that this is probably not a response to anything you're doing. This is merely an age phase that your dog is going through, but your job is just to be that consistent thing. Try to insist they get fed at the set times. Try to insist they get plenty of naps. Every time they have a nap, they empty their brain out of all of those experiences, so they start fresh every time. So that really, really can make a difference to your teenage dog as they're going through this period. It's also quite common that your teenage dog will start to try things that they had tried as a puppy. So the types of behaviour that you struggled with most as a puppy, maybe they were quite mouthy, or maybe you struggled with their house training or something like that. Whatever it was that you struggled with then, you may have felt like you fixed that and you solved that problem and you've moved on and forgotten about it. Those are the types of things that will resurface during this period as well. Only because whenever they were a problem when your dog was a puppy, they would have felt that they achieved something perhaps through those behaviours. So maybe if your dog was very difficult with their house training, every time they went to a certain spot, maybe you would have reacted to that, got up quickly, tried to run them out of the house so they could get to the garden as quick as possible. And that they will remember that those times was a good way to get your attention or to get you to go outside. So this behaviour will resurface, maybe not for the same reason it was there originally, but maybe this time your dog's just trying to get outside so they can play, or they want to just be outside, or they just want to do something different. Perhaps they're just feeling very frustrated right now. So don't worry if you're seeing behaviours come back that you had when you were a puppy. Try to figure out what it is your dog's trying to achieve with those behaviours again. If they're trying to get attention, or if they're trying to get some extra treats, or whatever it is that they're trying to do. That's the problem to address. And then, just hold on tight and wait for this period to pass. If you haven't had your dog neutered now and you feel like that's something that you want to do, unless it's very urgent, I would usually try to wait now until they've gone through this period, just because they are quite vulnerable to experiences. If your dog's not used to being at the vet overnight or anaesthetics or anything like that, this is going to come as quite a shock to them. And if you happen to catch them on one of their overwhelmed days when they're feeling already quite vulnerable, then that experience can actually have a knock-on effect that will last with them for a long time. So if you haven't had them neutered by now and they've come into their teenage phase and it's not urgent, I would hold on now and wait until they become an adult. So 18 months to 2 years. Once you feel like that behaviour has just started to settle down and they've become more consistent, more steady, more predictable, and easier to sort of work with on a daily basis, you can probably be sure then that this teenage period has passed. and that any experiences they have while they're getting neutered will just be accepted as normal experiences. If you're going through this puppy teenage phase right now, then you really have my sympathy. I work with teenage dogs a lot, and it's a really stressful time for a lot of people. Some dogs just sail right through it, but many don't. And if that's how it feels to you right now, then, you know, hold on tight, keep going, you'll get there. If you need help from a behaviourist, then get that help now. But be aware that the types of training that you'll be doing might take longer to see results compared to maybe normal. And when you do see results, it might be a little bit kind of hit and miss. Sometimes it will feel that you're doing really, really well, and other days you've gone back a step or two. That's just normal teenage training. So just keep going blindly, you'll get there. And good luck with it. Take care for now. Bye bye.